So, welcome to the Accidental Telescope Factory. So, a quick survey, another survey. How many of you enjoyed Lego or some sort of building toy as a kid? Okay. And how many of you actually have built IKEA furniture and enjoyed it, at least a little bit? Okay, you are the sick, twisted individuals that this talk is for. And you're my peeps for sure. Okay. So, a little bit about me. I've always been in love with technology. This is me at, I think, grade 7. I was a robot builder at an early age. Was always involved with technology. And then that continued throughout my life. About 10 years ago, I was the VP at a high-tech company. I was actually responsible for a CMOS image sensor development group. So a lot of the new technology in astronomy is very near and dear to my heart. And then another one of my loves throughout my life was motorcycles. Unfortunately, well, that didn't turn out so well, as you'll find out. But early on, I also enjoyed astronomy. I did a lot of film astronomy. These are actually film images that I took 40 minutes, a single 40-minute exposure using film. On a tracked telescope, and then using a flash to make that barn stand still about halfway through the exposure. That was taken about the year 2000. And then, of course, as digital came along, I started enjoying digital. That was great. I'm sure a lot of you have been on this journey where you start taking circumpolar, like star trail images. I was having a lot of fun. I wasn't spending a lot of time doing astronomy, but I was having fun. And then in 2015, 10 years ago, something happened that changed everything. This car decided to go through a stop sign. And I was in the intersection on my motorcycle at that time. This is on the main road. So I was going about 80, and he was going about 100, and nobody even touched their brakes. We connected at full speed. And I ended up, I'm going to make this a small image because it's a little bit upsetting for me and for the rest of you. So a small image of me in the hospital. And of course, I sustained a spinal cord injury and lots of other injuries. And basically, the body that I was used to was gone. My career that I was used to was over. And unfortunately, my wife at the time decided that she didn't want to be part of this journey anymore. So the family situation ended at that time. And so there was a lot of loss. There were a lot of very dark nights. I was in the hospital for over 6 months recovering from these injuries. And there was a lot of legal stuff now happening, like divorce type of things happening. And a lot of recovery, rehab, and healing. And there were a lot of dark nights, and I have a very busy mind. And I realized that I couldn't just be focused on these dark things. So I was on the internet a little bit, and I was already aware of 3D printers, and I decided that maybe I should do something about 3D printing. This is a 3D printer that was reasonably popular at that time, but what you don't see is that it's actually in my hospital room. I didn't ask anyone if that was okay, but I went ahead and ordered a 3D printer and had it delivered to the hospital. And there it is set up in the corner of my hospital room. That's actually my room at Hamilton General. And I started my journey into learning about 3D printing. And the first thing I did with 3D printing is I started most people that start with 3D printing, I started downloading models that other people had designed. So I downloaded, the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars and team logos and things like that. And I would give them to the nurses, especially the ones that were very kind to me, or really took extra time to make sure that I was doing okay, or the physiotherapists, the occupational therapists, all these people that were helping me. I would print them things, but of course 3D printing was very slow, so these prints would run overnight, and I remember a number of times waking up in the middle of the night where the staff wasn't coming to check on me. They wanted to see what the 3D printer was doing. So it was quite interesting. So that was how I started in 3D printing. And of course, after I came out of the hospital, I was in a temporary housing situation. It wasn't good. That inspired me to start designing my own wheelchair accessible house. And so we built a wheelchair accessible house. And on the left, you can see it under construction. On the right, you can see that 3D printer from the hospital finding its new home in the garage. And then once my house was wheelchair accessible, I started thinking about, okay, how do I get back into astronomy? I started building these motorized mobile platforms, and they got a little bit fancier and a little bit better. And here you can see an early prototype. It's actually, once we got it motorized, and then finally we were outside, we were on kind of the front sidewalk area, and I started making my first images again. And I was pretty happy with these first results. I mean, they won't win any Starfest awards, but they're okay. And starting to see some real detail. So I was happy. I was out there. I was doing astronomy, and then on a couple of different nights, I went into the restroom, used the restroom inside the house, and we lost our microphone. Anyway, that's a thief running off with some of my astronomy equipment. Can you guys still hear me? Oh, there we go. Yes. We're back. So I had thieves, and then the city decided to upgrade its lighting in front of my house, and they basically turned night into day in front of my house. So we kind of lost, between the thieves and the light pollution, kind of lost our ability to use the front house with these motorized platforms. So back to the drawing board, or back to the CAD software again. Now, I don't know if Wayne Parker's here, but this gentleman named Wayne Parker, he designed something called SkyShed. It's a fantastic solution for setting up a permanent backyard observatory, but it's not very wheelchair accessible. So I took it into CAD, and I just made some slight modifications to make it wheelchair accessible, wheelchair friendly. So with a little help from some friends, we built the bent nail observatory. And it's bent nail because we were amateurs, and a lot of times we had to pull the nails out when we made small or big mistakes, put them back in, so it became the bent nail observatory. And here's a quick view of what a wheelchair accessible observatory, well, you can't even see the ground, but you just have to trust me, I can get in there. But this is, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen roll-off rooftop observatories, so I have 2 scopes in there. And I still use that today, and my astrophotography took another little bump upwards, and I'm sure all of you know Andromeda, there it is. Tadpoles, of course, another favorite. That was a lot of fun. And then, of course, the Veil Nebula, and Heart and Soul, and that was a lot of fun. That's 70 hours, if you can believe it. But yeah, that was a fun target. So, yeah, this is happening. I'm doing astronomy again, and you start to okay, my career path changed dramatically. A lot of things changed dramatically in my life. Is this my purpose? Am I on my path? And then I got a small request from my niece. And my niece saw these telescopes, and she was inspired. She said, "Uncle Bryan, how can I get a telescope?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's a good question. We should." And of course, I wasn't going to set her up with an all-seeing, all-dancing astrophotography rig. How old was she? Like 11. So I started thinking, what can I build? And I always loved the truss style of telescopes. So I started designing things, but I knew that I should probably use a pretty industrial material like ABS. ABS is the plastic that's in your car bumpers, right? If it's good enough for making cars, it's good enough for making telescopes. So I started learning how to do ABS. ABS is not easy, as you can see. My first ABS prints, well, when they didn't adhere to the bed, I made them adhere to the bed, but then the bed would be the thing that broke. So I cracked a number of printer beds. I'm going to say I cracked at least 10 printer beds, learning how to make ABS print. And then one of the other things, you have to learn how to create an environment that ABS can print in, these warm environments. We won't get into too many technical details, but ABS plastic is not easy to do 3D printing with. But I made a little insulated doghouse for my printer, and that helped. And then I started designing a telescope for her, and we started testing a telescope design for her. And that's her. what we learned from this exercise is that that's fine if she wants to look at the horizon, but at zenith, it was too tall. So we cut down the legs on that prototype and made it so that that was the first prototype. And when I printed all the parts, we had her come in as a first-time telescope maker, and she built her own telescope. She loved this color, and now she can see the zenith, which is great. And that is a happy niece. So that's how I built my first telescope. I mean, I'd done various bits for astronomy before, but that was my first ground-up telescope build. And that worked pretty well, so maybe I should make more. Some more telescopes? Well, more printers, of course. So you see a couple more dog houses, and they're mostly 3D printed as well. And continued improving the design, more printers, more telescopes, more help. So we got some volunteers. A lot of them are here today. That's Emily on the left and Terry on the right, some of our original. And we did accidental telescope factory Sundays, where we'd spend 4 hours every Sunday building telescopes. There's Terry building, actually Babylon is, here. Babylon's here. That was one of our earlier 6-inch telescopes. You can see the crew, and we just kind of all used my dining room and converted it. Oh, and this is my garage, and a lot of our regular volunteers as well. We started wanting to do astrophotography, so we started designing an astrograph version of, we call this a 6-inch Skyward 150, 150 millimeter diameter telescope. And so we had more telescopes. Well, we should loan them out to the public. So we converted a shed in my side yard into a little library area. And so we started making telescopes to loan out, and made a website so that people could find us. And we started hosting events, sometimes in a snowstorm. But we still have success even on cloudy nights. Oh, and this is something we do with the Guelph Symphony Orchestra, Guelph Symphony Under the Stars. And we often go to local schools and do events with them. And our telescopes find their way all over the world. This is a telescope in Germany. Actually, Carl, who's here, one of our volunteers, lives in Germany. He's got one of our scopes in Germany. And we started to make variations of them from left to right. You see Lort Simpson, Ducky, Barbie, and Swamp Monster. Some variations on our design. Just make it more engaging for young people, make it more fun. And then I've made videos now about how you can build your own online. And we build our own 3D printers. So we build the 3D printers, and the 3D printers build the telescopes, and it's a great circle of life in my garage. And here's some of the printers. And I'm sure all of you have seen it, well, maybe not all of you, but if you haven't seen a 3D printer in action, I'll just include a few seconds. Oh, that's the time lapse. They don't print this fast. I wish they did. I wish they were this fast. You're seeing hours of printing now compressed in seconds. But here's a few different telescope parts being printed. And if we print them well, then things like our red dot finder just snap into place just beautifully. There we go. So we do custom telescopes. That was one for the University of Guelph. This was our very first astrophotography attempt. That's Carl again. He did the Whirlpool. And then we made the astrophotography version, and that was quite a nice addition. And these are some of the results from our 3D printed astrophotography 6-inch scope. So a lot like Babylon, but just the astrophotography version. So yeah, you get the Veil Nebula, the elephants. These are all from our little 6-inch 3D printed scopes. And there's an even newer, better version of Whirlpool. Rose and Cigar. Pelican, I think. Okay, so we were having success. That was great. But of course, we're astronomers. We're never happy with the telescope we have. We're always thinking of the telescope we could have. So we decided to go from the Skyward 150 to an 8-inch design. Right here is Rosie. Rosie's, this is the Rosie. So here you can see our, basically we call it an elevated Dobsonian. So you can see a rocker box up on a tripod, but we also have an astrograph version of Rosie. So in about, I don't know, how fast can you guys do it? 10 minutes? Don't do it now. But in 10 minutes, Rosie can convert from being an astrograph to a pure visual scope. So if you want to do outreach or you just want to have a nice visual night of observing, you can put Rosie on her rocker box. And oh yes, we also have done a 3D printed Crayford focuser that works with an EAF, and all the images you saw are done with our 3D printed focuser, and it's quite heavy duty. It'll handle a DSLR with a filter wheel and anything else you can throw at it. Pretty heavy duty design. So that's Ember. That was the first one we built. And that's Vasu, the gentleman who took the pictures that you saw, the astrographs that I just went through. He's the one who took those astrographs. And then here's the first Skyward 200 image that Vasu took with that telescope you just saw, Ember, with our 3D printed focuser. So, now you've sort of seen the journey to getting to build them. Now I'm going to show you how you could build your own, and we'll do it very quickly. How much time have we got? Oh, we're doing okay. Great. Okay, I must have been talking fast. That's good. Okay, so now we'll talk about, so I'm just going to show what it takes to build a scope a lot like Babylon back there. So we start with the most straightforward one. If you come to our workshop this afternoon, we'll show you how to build a Crayford focuser. We'll show you how to build all kinds of other things. We're just going to start with the basic one here today. So it's a Newtonian telescope, so the light comes in the front, bounces off that rear mirror, up to another smaller mirror that's kind of on a 45-degree angle, then comes out your focuser. So that's kind of the basic principle. Sir Isaac Newton developed this style of telescope many years ago, but it's still a great way to work today. So what do we start with? We start with plumbing pipe, Home Depot. So we go to the Home Depot, we get 3 pieces of plumbing pipe, and we cut them to about 3 feet long. Then we take these little 3D printed feet. This telescope making doesn't have to be complicated. They're just a compression fit. You just put them in there, and they stay in there. Sometimes you use a little rubber mallet to get them in there. And then once you got the legs assembled, then we go to the tripod apex, the part that sits on top of the legs and supports the azimuth motion of the tripod. Put some bolts in there. And then we put in our cross braces, because there's nothing more frustrating than these hobby killer telescopes that are wobbling and wiggling while you're looking through them. So we put on these cross braces, so it's 3D printed couplers on each corner of the triangle. And then again, another trip to Home Depot, some PVC pipe, 1-inch PVC electrical conduit, if anybody that is an electrician. But again, every Home Depot has these pieces. So once we have the tripod assembled, we put some pieces of Teflon on top, and then we put come on in, there we go. We put the rocker box base on there, and that's ABS plastic. And the combination of ABS and Teflon makes a very buttery motion. You get a nice coefficient of friction that makes that nice motion where you can point your telescope, because it's like a really long lens. You're looking really far away, you want to be able to move it quite precisely. And then on top of that rocker box base, we put the uprights and the cross piece to build our rocker box. And it's just put together with bolts, as we'll show you, because all of you are coming at 1 o'clock. Okay, so now we start with the OTA, the optical tube assembly. We put the rear of the mirror cell on with its collimation screws. And now we put in the mirror cell. And these are called T-nuts. We use T-nuts to hold everything together with aluminum extrusions. As you'll see the aluminum extrusions come in a second. That's the mirror cell body, and we use these 3M mounting tape, the outdoor version that's quite strong, quite resilient, to hold it to the mirror cell. We use a different technique in the bigger scope, but for this one it's quite good. And in comes the mirror and the retaining ring. So just to make sure that mirror stays in there. And then, these top and bottom pieces that came in, we call them dead weight. So we wanted a way to be able to quickly balance the telescope. Let's say you want to put your cell phone on the front of it, because your eyepiece, you've got a beautiful picture in the eyepiece. You want to mount a cell phone on the front of it, but now you're front heavy on your telescope. Well, how do you counterbalance it? And batteries. Everybody's got a battery drawer, almost everybody. You got D cells, AA cells, it works with both of them. You can pop some batteries in those dead weights, and now you have instant balance on your Dobsonian telescope again. And then those long pieces that just came in, those are aluminum extrusions, so they're kind of the backbone of everything. We don't 3D print the aluminum extrusions, but they do hold everything together. So then we just start sliding things onto those aluminum extrusions. And when you come at 1 o'clock, we'll show you exactly how that works. You put T-nuts in those extrusions, and then you slide the components. Those are the mid-trusses. And now the trunnions, or the alt bearings, come in from the sides. And our alt bearing rings come in from the sides. And they're the things that sit on the rocker box and allow your altitude motion. And there's more Teflon underneath them to, again, give you the buttery motion that you want. In come our baffles so that we can prevent stray light and also have some resistance to dew collection. And then more T-nuts, more other nuts. Here comes the spider, our 4-legged spider. And here's our spider housing, so those fit together. And then here comes our secondary mirror holder, some more mounting tape. And here comes our secondary mirror. All right. Now we're ready to put our secondary mirror assembly together. Oh, here comes our upper baffle. And now our secondary mirror assembly can go onto the telescope. We've kind of developed a custom bat knob mask, aperture mask, dust cap combination, so that just came in. And then here comes our focuser. We've got a few different focusers, as you'll see when you're with us at 1 o'clock. And red dot finder on the top. Mark was talking about different finders. We love red dot finders. That's just, especially, a lot of these are outreach scopes. For somebody that's a first-time telescope user, you just tell them, put your hands on the telescope, move it around, put that red dot on whatever you're looking at, and it's just a great experience for first time. You know, there's no batteries in here other than the little tiny battery that's inside that red dot finder. It's the only battery you need. All the rest is human powered. Oh, can't forget our fasteners. And here come the batteries. It looks like Star Wars. All right, and okay, here we go. And that's our Skyward 150. That's the whole telescope. So that's how one is made. And it's it's an interesting journey, but we've made it. How many have we made now? Like 25. Just ourselves, we made at least 25 of them. And then various people around the world have made them. South Africa, Germany, Australia is one. You know, there's a few people. You can download these designs, by the way. I make them available for free. We have something called a GitHub page. You just download the STL files. When you have a printer, oh yes, I should mention, one of the questions that invariably comes up, what kind of printer do I need? There's a really nice printer right now called the Elegoo Century Carbon. And that's quite an affordable printer. And in our workshop this afternoon, you will see a telescope that was printed on a $400 printer, $450, something like that, dollar printer, because it is ABS plastic. You can get away with a less expensive printer, but don't leave your telescope in the sun, because if you print with the cheaper plastic, you know, it might be a puddle by the time you get home. Not a puddle, but let's say an unrecognizable mass of plastic. But when you print with this ABS plastic, that's what you do. Okay, so we'll talk about what's coming, and then we'll get to questions. There are always a few questions. So what's coming? So we're making kits available to astromakers and educators. Our store is still a little bit rudimentary, but basically we're selling kits where you can get the mirrors, like the optics that you need, the aluminum extrusions, all the fasteners, because the fasteners can be quite a pain. There's a number of them. So we make it possible you just click buy once, and then you get everything you need to make one of these yourself. If you have your own 3D printer and you love 3D printing, this is great. A lot of schools, a lot of educators have 3D printers. One of the next projects, so now that Rosie, the 8-inch design is pretty much done, I'm actually, one of the problems with my telescope design is that it's difficult for me to use from the wheelchair because I can't get my eyeball to the eyepiece. So I've been dreaming for years about how can I do visual. You see I do a lot of astrophotography, but I'd like to be able to get my eye to the eyepiece. And I could also make it comfortable for everyone else that might like to observe from a seated position. So I'm working on a telescope that you can do visual observing from a seated position where you don't have to move the chair. And I'm working on that. I've got the parts for a 12-inch Ritchie Crescent already in-house, and I've already got some very basic drawings underway. Maybe if I'm back next year at Starfest, I'll be able to show such a telescope to everyone. I'm also working on a do-it-yourself harmonic equatorial mount. I have some special twists on harmonic mounts that I'd like to do that might be very interesting. And so this will combine both 3D printing and CNC machining because the loads on these is pretty extreme. So I was also part of an open source group that we designed a CNC machine that can CNC metal. So it'll be an open source design again, but you'll need a CNC machine to make the harmonic mount. Or maybe we'll have kits for that too, where you can just get the CNC machine parts. I'm not sure. We're also I'm a bit of a mirror grinder from my past. I have a mirror-o-matic, if anybody knows what that is. So we're looking at doing some mirror grinding, coating. We have a young friend, Mateo.
He's not. He's
okay. Anyway, we'd like to look at doing some coating, and I also have some friends at the University of Guelph that they can do aluminum deposition as well, and interferometry. I have a couple of interferometers. And I'd like to be able to measure mirrors before I ship them out, especially the ones that I make, and also the ones that I don't make myself. And there's some other crazy projects underway. There's a camper van out there. That's my camper van. I made a wheelchair accessible camper van. It's why I'm able to be here today. That's been a crazy project, and it's suitable for camping, but it certainly could use some more refinement, so we continue to work on that. I also have a 3D printed off-road wheelchair, and we take the 3D printed parts and we coat them in, basically, we put carbon fiber skins on them to make them nice and strong. I don't have one of those here this week, but that's one of the other projects. And then maybe one of the even crazier projects is I'd like to make an affordable observatory. And so I've come up with this concept of a water bottle observatory. So take recycled water bottles and hold them together with 3D printed parts and basically have a full-size, 6 foot or 8 foot diameter observatory made of water bottles. Crazy? Yeah, maybe. But I've already got a lot of the parts printed, and we've done tests, and we think it can work. And we would skim. We wouldn't have big gaps between the water bottles. We would use the water bottles to make the frame, and then we'd use the skin to make the real structural integrity. So the water bottles would just kind of hold the shape while we skin it. And it could be a very inexpensive way to do a water bottle observatory. Thank you for visiting our factory. We're going to be building 6 telescopes in 4 hours, and that includes 3 Crayford focusers and 3 tripods. We've got lots of stuff to build. Any of you that are even slightly interested, I promise you don't need any special skills. We'll find a spot for you to put some screws in and make some telescopes with us at 1 o'clock. And that's it. So any questions? Oh boy. So how should we do questions? Should people come up to the front, or what do we normally do?
You can moderate, or I can moderate. Your wife can repeat questions with the microphone for them.
Oh,
you want to do that, and I'll take the questions and repeat them.
Oh, sure, okay.
For that. Any questions? Question right at the back there. First one to speak. Go ahead. Yell.